Good evening, every pony. You know, potential is a hard thing to figure. This may be shocking to some of you, but I have, in fact, read a lot of books. An earth-shattering revelation, I know. You spend that long looking at different kinds of books and prose, and eventually you're going to come across one that completely squanders its potential. Maybe the same thing has happened to you. Maybe you've seen a series and wished it lived up to what it could have been. Or maybe you spent 6 months slaving away in a school trying to get into a good university, causing you to neglect all of your creative desires, leading you to question if you're achieving your own potential. And then you find yourself living in a long corridor with a bunch of ponies who review stuff while you're then attacked by a psychotic foal, a power-crazy alicorn, and turned into a tennis ball. And then you wake up in the middle of the night wandering around your apartment questioning to yourself, why am I still here? Why don't I just go home where it's safe? But that's besides the point. Even though the thing you saw or read itself may not necessarily have been bad, it's just not what it could have been. These were pretty much the thoughts that went through my head when I read the story Her Own Pony by Joro Frere. I think that's how you say it. A story that actually I had read and favorited a few years back. But going back and reading it now, it really only proves to me how a story can completely bypass its potential and remain a story that's okay at best. In saying that, however, I have to concede that this story isn't actually badly written. In fact, if you were to judge it solely on the language the writer uses in the fic, it's actually a very good story. But from a character perspective, let's just start from the beginning. Her Own Pony takes place during the events of Too Many Pinkies, and centers around one of the Pinkie clones who wasn't inside the town hall when Twilight was carrying out her test for the real Pinkie Pie. This Pinkie clone sees her fellows being erased and, understandably, freaks out about it, thinking that if she gets caught, the main six will erase her too. After outrunning the main six, the Pinkie clone learns about Princess Celestia, and comes to the conclusion that if she can get a royal pardon off of the princess, then the other ponies won't want to hunt her down anymore. So the clock is ticking for this Pinkie clone, or Strand as she ends up calling herself, to get to Canterlot, get her royal pardon, and figure out who she is in the process. Become her own pony, if you will. Now, from that description, someone like me should love this story. It's set up to be this entirely character-driven thing, where Strand figures out who she is and how she's different from her original. A powerful, personal story of self-discovery and a search for self-worth. I've gone on record saying that the most important aspect of your story is its characters. It's all very well and good to have a good plot and themes that you want to convey, but if you don't give a damn about the people who are living through your plot and actually conveying your themes, then you're going to lose reader interest pretty quickly. And therein lies the core problem with this story. But I make it a point to address the good points in all stories first, and this fic is no exception. Without a doubt, the best thing about this story is its opening 3 chapters. Each of them perfectly sets up the fic and gives us a great look into the mind of Strand. Her excitable nature and her rampant ADD all fit in perfectly with the personalities the Pinkie clones were shown to have in the episode. In addition to that, the author does a great job of capturing Strand's fear and confusion over what's happened to her sisters. As the entire story is told from Strand's perspective, we get a really good look inside her mind and how she rationalizes what she's just seen. It also helps that Jaro Frere has an excellent grasp over descriptive language. Whole sections of the first 3 chapters are given over to Strand dealing with how alone she feels, fearing what will happen if she gets caught by the main 6, and a lot of soul-searching, as Strand tries to figure out how she's different from the original Pinkie, and whether she is actually bad or not. This is all really good setup for Strand's character, and seeing her final resolution to fight back against what the main 6 think is wrong with her, and go to Canterlot by herself, sets up the rest of the story perfectly. It's clear that a lot of care went into writing the fic, from the way it depicts Strand's despair and self-reflection, to the way it conveys the hustle and bustle of Canterlot and the atmosphere of its many districts. All of it is really well shown. If you wanted to enjoy a story purely based on its descriptive language, by all means check this one out. However, I am not a stallion who is wooed by descriptive language alone, and consequently I must now address what's bad about the story. So, as I've said, Her Own Pony is based around the character development of Strand, how she goes from a carbon copy of Pinkie Pie to a totally unique pony. The story's description sets up this story arc, and the first 3 chapters set the stage for an excellent story about Strand's progression. But it all very quickly falls apart in the following chapters. How does it fall apart? Well, it's actually quite simple. Strand is not an active character. I'm gonna go into smart guy writer mode for a moment and explain what I mean by that, and why Strand's actions in the story make her a very weak character. There are two different kinds of characters: active characters and reactive characters. An active character is someone who moves the plot forward by directly affecting it. They choose to make decisions, and as a result, the story moves forward because of them. A reactive character is the antithesis of this. The plot moves forward around them, and they're pushed forward as a result. But being a reactive character means that your character can come across as very weak in the eyes of the audience because they aren't making decisions for themselves. The unfortunate thing about this story is that Strand is way more reactive than she is active. After her initial decision to go to Canterlot and see the princesses, she doesn't make any other decisions which move the plot forward. Everything else just happens around her, and she just reacts to it rather than having a say in what's going on. I know I've said the first 3 chapters are quite good, but this is an evident problem even there. She's cornered by the main 6, but it's okay, Derpy bails her out. She's lost in Canterlot, getting harassed by a grouchy shop owner. It's okay, Fancy Pants bails her out. She's discovered to be a clone by Octavia, a scene that goes nowhere, by the way. But it's okay, she'll look really sad, and Best Background Pony will take pity on her and bail her out. I think you see my point. In a story where the character's development is the most important aspect of your fic, having a character who doesn't make decisions for herself will only bring harm upon your story. And while it's perfectly fine to have a character who begins their journey as a timid person, you need to show some kind of personality change as the story progresses. Show them sticking up for themselves more, or applying what they've learned from other characters. This isn't just a problem with her character, it's also a problem with the plot itself. It's like the author was too afraid to have Strand make her own decisions, so he made it so where she wouldn't have to, and sheer dumb luck would just pull through for her. And it's not just these random scenarios of crisis that Strand fails to develop as a character. There are so many segments in the fic that just go nowhere, even though they're built up to be really important. See my previous comment about the scene with Octavia. For a lot of the time Strand spends in Canterlot, Fancy Pants takes her around to a huge variety of districts so she can get a real taste of Canterlot life. He shows her the musicians district, the actors district, the artists district, a whole bunch of places that will be great places to get an idea of what she likes. But she just kind of sits there and lets Fancy prattle on about each of these places without putting in any input. Where is the logic in that? A moment to expand upon Strand's character was practically gift-wrapped for you by Celestia herself, and you did nothing with it? Once again, this is a huge missed opportunity to expand on how Strand is different from Pinkie. I mean, a little smile or a small show of interest towards some of the things that Fancy is showing her, or something. It's especially frustrating because Fancy is constantly going on about how wonderful it is that how in each of these districts, ponies are just accepted for being who they are. But with Strand, it's like it's in one ear and out the other. She never pays heed to what he says and never takes the initiative to go and take part in what she sees going on around her. I'm feeling like a broken record already, but this makes her a very weak character. And really, it also makes her very uninteresting. Her priorities are very easy to understand. I mean, yeah, she's being chased and if she gets caught, she'll die. She's tense. It's very understandable. The problem here, however, is that if your character only has a one-track mind and is only wholly focused on one thing and doesn't take the time to enjoy other aspects of life or engage in the activities of other characters around them, then they're just going to bore the reader. And God, I was bored! But above all else, the worst offense against her character comes at the very end of the story. So, by the end of the story, Strand is being affected by Metal Gear Solid 4 syndrome, ergo she has clone decay, and there's a bigger ticking clock element introduced as it seems that she is now completely fading away. On the way to her appointment with Celestia, Strand gets lost in a crowd, and, surprise surprise, she gets found by Rainbow Dash and taken to the castle where the rest of the main 6 are waiting. While there, a friend of Strand's, a changeling who disguises himself as a zebra, gets his disguise taken away and he's caught by the castle guards. Strand is also pulled into the castle and, sure enough, her cover gets blown as well. So after being chased around by the main 6, questioning who she is, going through an awful lot of hardship in the few days that she's been alive, and seeing several examples of how different ponies can have a variety of interests and still get along, she's asked by the main 6, Who are you? And how does she respond? Actually, I'm just a clone. So, after everything that she's been told, how she can be different from her original, trying to find a way that she is unique in this strange world, according to her, all she is just a clone. Well, I must say, thank you very much, Mr. Jarrow Frere, for letting me know that little nugget of information, because pretty much what you've just told me is that every single thing that Strand has gone through up until this point in the story has been completely pointless! What was the point of any of the things that Strand did up until that moment in the story if she's just going to turn around and say, nope, there's nothing different about me whatsoever, all I am is a copy of the pink pony sitting right over there? This only reinforces what I said at the start about characters being the most important aspect of your story. Good characters will bring your story to life. Characters with believable goals, personalities, and flaws. They will carry your story. Flat and uninteresting ones, like the deflated cotton candy ball in this fic, drag down the overall enjoyment and make the whole thing a slog to get through. And really, it's this incompetent handling of Strand's character development that killed the story for me. And even though it may not sound like it, I'm actually really disappointed that it was handled this poorly, because the rest of the fic has genuine care put into it, as I said. But in terms of what the story actually sets out to do with its plot, it falls flat on its face onto a bed of hot coal. So, in the end, I really don't think I can recommend this fic. The fact that it completely botches what it set out to do makes it, in my opinion, not worth reading. If you really wanted to, go through the first 3 chapters, because they are genuinely good pieces of writing. But everything after that, I'd say just go ahead and pass on it. Jeez. It's been a while since I genuinely disliked something. Gonna have to brace myself now for all the reams of hate mail I'm sure I'll be getting. Well, it's a living. Regardless, however, thank you all very much for watching. I'm EmeraldComet, and I will see you all next time.